We have another one of those fantastic interviews here at True FM. This is Clayton Giovanni, and I'm telling you, it is really awesome to be here with the new True FM because you wouldn't believe the fun things I get to announce. And guess what? We have got this great group that just formed. It is called the Ohio Peace Collaborative, and it's just amazing. I've got three great guys here. I've got a John, a Kyle, and Steve. You know what? You don't need me talking, you need them talking. So they're going to introduce themselves. They're going to tell you what it's all about. And they've even got a great website, ohiopeace.com. We're going to have all the links in the pages. You know how we do it. But we're going to be amazing and fantastic because they are. So, hot gentlemen. Yeah, by the way, they're hot looking. Hot gentlemen, can you please introduce yourselves and tell me and tell us what is the Ohio Peace Collaborative?
Right, my name's John Carlan. The Ohio Peace Collaborative is a collection of community members and people from the Ohio State University, and we're working together to build peace, justice, and security across Columbus, Ohio, and hopefully one day the world.
Big ambitions. Awesome. Wow.
Yeah, it's right now we're actually housed at the Mershon Center for International Security Studies. It's part of the Ohio State University, like John had mentioned. It was actually created based off of, we have a big international conference coming in that we recruited to Ohio State. Based on that, we decided that we needed to build some momentum around the idea, kind of push the idea what Mershon Center is kind of all about with the peace sort of side of things, because right now we talk a lot more about the security and international security stuff, that this is more about the human security side of things. And so this sort of group was put together based off of that to kind of push that idea.
That's absolutely, like, I can understand the power and the imagination that had to go into all this, and then like, okay, now let's make it work. That's great. And what is your name, by the way?
I'm Kyle McCrae. Sorry about that.
Yeah, that's all right. That's cool. Thank you, Kyle. Now, who's our third gentleman here in this ring?
This is Stephen Blaylock, also with the Mershon Center at the Ohio State University. I think one of the really cool things about OPC and what we're trying to do is we're trying to look at peace and conflict in a variety of different ways. So we're going to have a 2-night film festival, which is really awesome to kind of highlight how does humanities, how does the arts, how does film impact the peace movement in Ohio and elsewhere. We're going to have a civil discourse panel focusing on the important role of civility in U.S. politics. It's kind of crazy right now. I think people are already over it, and it's just going to get worse. We have a really cool mental health panel regarding post-traumatic stress disorder. So we're looking at peace as not just the absence of violence and war, which definitely plays a part in that, but we're looking at politics, we're looking at civil discourse, we're looking at the arts. So we're looking at this in a very interdisciplinary way, which I think is a really cool angle to take.
So what motivated this to become here today? What started all that?
Well, it came from a general interest in building peace. We all share a common interest in a more peaceful and just society. And from our different backgrounds, we sort of came together to decide what could we do within Columbus to do something positive, long-term, and sustainable that would build peace and principally hope, because ultimately peace is really just about hope. It's about people having hope for their children, for their lives, for their neighbours, for themselves. And I think the problem here is that politicians thrive on fear. They use fear to get elected. They use fear to separate people, to divide people so they can garner votes and fracture the society. And we wanted to do something about that. We wanted to do a reversal of that. We wanted to bring people together to share hope, to share a common vision, because after all, on this planet, we're all together in this little blue planet swerving around this solar system with not much else around us. So if we can't come together at this point in human history, when will we?
And one of those things we always talked about in each one of the meetings when we first started, discussing the idea of the collaborative and I guess really like almost even the festival then what spawned off of all this is that we want to just try to make an impact. I think most people here, especially in Columbus, want to do something. They just don't know what. So I think that, this is sort of that outlet that we're trying to provide an opportunity for anybody to come in and suggest an idea to how can we actually change things that we see that are unjust and that's affecting human security.
And kind of piggyback off what Kyle just said, we're trying to be action-oriented and solutions-based. We actually have a blog that people contribute every week regarding peace and security, looking at different topics like refugees, LGBT rights, etc. And we don't want to sit here and complain about how bad things are, like politicians suck.
No.
Oh my gosh,
that's our job over here.
Exactly.
Right.
They're fighting in the media, so blah blah blah. But we want to kind of come up with, can we be solutions-based? Can we have tangible results? So that's why we're kind of having these events, is to kind of drive an agenda to make things better. If we can do that in our small way in Columbus and eventually sprawl out. That was a kind of Virginia slant. Sprawl out. Virginia native
sprawl.
here,
Is it
proud.
sprawl or crawl?
Stop. If we can kind of spread that throughout Ohio and eventually throughout the United States, and make Columbus kind of a model and a hub
Yeah.
for peace, I think that's kind of what we're all about.
All right, and what's interesting is you picked this up in Ohio, where we've had our issues up in Cleveland and in Cincy on just race relations alone, and then you've got the LGBT community getting active and whatnot. And this is going to be a very good, how do I say, testing grounds for you guys. That'll be great. How long has this been how long has this been active, or all of a sudden it's more than just one person saying, it's now 2 or 3 people saying it and working on it? How long has that been?
Sure. We've always had, the Mershon Center's had a peace sort of programming that at least that we're supposed to do. I don't know if I want to call it, it's been lax, it was lackadaisical, so to speak, but it's been not as much outreach oriented. It's been very research sort of oriented. So it's the basis of the endowment that we're operating off of was supposed to have some outreach capabilities to it, and we never really, I guess, made up to the potential that we were hoping for that. So when John came on, 3 years ago?
Yeah,
God, I thought it was even longer than that.
That's because I'm so nice.
That he was sort of tasked to do more outreach things with the community, and I guess eventually we just got around to starting to, and we, like we said earlier, to encourage the conflict resolution education conference to come into Columbus and to the Ohio State University, and then off of that we just had an idea, let's really expand this and start to push it. So, and I think it's sort of gone from there that maybe we should we'll create this group, and we talked about separating from the Ohio State University so that we can be a little bit more, I guess, outreach oriented, because I know the university's focus is a lot more on the research side of things. But right now we're actually pretty happy where we're at Ohio State, because we've got not only the name and the branding, but the money is also really nice too. So
Money does move things.
Yeah,
It really does. Love too, but money does too.
And it's really cool because it's, we have faculty, we have staff, we have students. So this is a really collaborative effort. It's not just kind of one group
That's
of
the
people. And we've been working with so many community groups, with the Wexner Medical Center, the Gateway Film Center, professors at Ohio State, staff at Ohio State, different nonprofits. This is a really, like I said before, interdisciplinary cause to start a peace movement here in Columbus. So it's not just us. We're really kind of being aggressive and reaching out to all the folks that we think might be interested.
Okay. Good. Now, as far as the us, by the way, since I've got the 3 of you here, some people have either a background of being a hellion as a child, a Dennis the Menace, or others are the perfect little church boys. Each of you in your order, which one were you, and what made the change, or what kept it going?
Yeah, I was a bit of a hellion.
Really?
I grew up in London during the 80s, and I think that's enough said.
I could only thought I heard a Bronx accent.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, so yes, a little bit of a hellion, and what changed it for me was I got to spend some time with an African-American civil rights activist called Nora King. I lived with her in Watts, Los Angeles for 3 months, and I learned a lot from her. She was an amazing and wonderful woman. The one thing that she told me that has always stuck is that the powerless complain and the powerful make suggestions, and the really powerful do something about it.
I see a T-shirt coming up, by the way.
Yeah.
All right. Very awesome. Now, what about you then? Hellion or church boy?
I was kind of the sneaky hellion, whereas I put on a good face. I was really good with all my teachers, my parents, and but
Demon child, then,
sure.
basically.
But then I had run-ins with police, that sort of thing. Not anything serious. I mean, it was all sort of the same typical things where you get caught egging.
Arrests.
Well, no, yeah, the typical arrest. No, that you like you egg houses and toilet paper and things like that. So I actually got some pretty deep trouble for a middle schooler, I guess, at that time for doing that sort of thing. So I guess I kind of toned it down a little bit, and from there, being in high school, I actually joined a group called World of Difference that it brought together different students from different backgrounds, and the whole idea was to understand where they came from, so that we can understand each other ultimately, and not I guess judge another person for their name, what they look like, their if they have disabilities, if they're gay or anything like that. It's just they're just who they are as a person, and then we can judge them based on their character. And I guess it kind of went from there that I just that's how I sort of lived the rest of my life, is just going through those classes and becoming a leader in there.
Wow. Okay. And then you, Stephen, church boy, choir boy, Elliot?
Definitely. Oh my gosh, very goody two shoes. Absolutely. This is gonna be the least interesting part of it. Complete goody two shoes. I was school 24/7. Took my grades very seriously. National Honor Society, all that stuff. Would like if I got an A-, it would be like tears. So I was definitely goody two shoes all throughout college, and I'm definitely a rule follower for sure.
Okay, that's fine, and that's absolutely amazing. It's a nice in the balance on things. What makes you okay? I want to be good. I want to now do more with this. What made you? Because a lot of times that kind of person, it would also be, well, I don't want to step out. I don't want to be someone who's aggressive about it. What changed that and made a motivator?
I worked at the State House for 4 years. And so I think that's a really good segue into that. I think working in the State House in a very, very hostile environment politically made me, one of the things that I kind of bring to the Peace Collaborative is, when it comes to civil discourse and politics, having kind of had to work through that for 4 years, it was awful being kind of where we were in terms of political power and influence. So any way that I can kind of fight back a little bit, I think that's kind of where it spawned on me, is when I was in the State House and kind of climbing a mountain every day and just never getting anywhere.
Gotcha. Now, since you came from the State House, watching what's going on with all of this, do you think there's a possibility for, at its current state and much less its future state, that the State House and other political people will start looking, listening, and giving it more credence? Because I'll tell you now, I've got a lot of cynicism in me about the whole nature. And trust me, I love what you guys are doing. I think this is really overdue. And I am a Star Trek fan of the concept of everyone being in peace. So what about this, as far as them being active about it?
Hashtag real talk. I'm totally jaded. I think it's going to be extremely incremental, and I don't think it's
realistic
gonna
though.
Is no, thing. I mean, I'm incredibly jaded with the democratic process and kind of reaching out to folks that maybe don't agree or see what we're trying to do here. And there's going to be a lot of people I just don't get it, and I'm not averse to that. I think if we can reach even one person per event, per year, whatever, I think that's worth it. At the end of the day, there's going to be people that are like, well, we're not going to support that. That's fine, but we still got to do it because it's the right thing to do.
Bringing up a history that's not part of you, but it's part of your history. We had our 60s flower children. You know what I'm saying? I mean, honestly, there's a lot of this that I'm hearing when I was a kid, because I'm that old. What's the difference between them, what's happened to them, and where you guys are looking to go?
Well, I think the big difference here is that the 60s flower children were a peripheral group surrounding, what was really hardcore activism. The civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, and things of that nature. So we're different in the sense that what we're trying to do is draw upon that history of activism and rights that you saw within the 60s, and it goes far beyond that, far before that. I mean, the great thing about America is you think about the emancipation of the slaves. That was an action that was started by activists. By activists from the Quaker communities, from the Peace Church communities started that. You look at the women's rights movement, again, it's activism. And I think what happened for a few years, and I think a large part of that is to do with the economic crisis, and I think a large part of that is also to do with the war on terror, is people became frightened, and it almost became a bad word to be an active citizen. The idea of don't be a troublemaker, kind of like in America in the 50s. So I love your analogy of the 60s, because I think what we've done is we've come through the 50s, which is the last 10 years or so, and I think we're emerging into the 60s, and I think in a good way, that the grassroots movement is there, it's starting to flourish, and I think it's regaining traction. I see in my students a lot of hope and a lot of idealism, and you can see that with the people like Sanders getting the young vote. Young people especially, are looking to the future.
What stops that? What stops that? Because you got, like you said, you have all your students in your class. That's great. And you got them, majority of them are right there. Everyone kind of like agrees for the most part. And then they step away from the classroom. Some time's gone by. A little bit of reality hit them in the face. What makes some hold on and what makes some drop off?
Well, Winston Churchill said years ago that if you're not left wing when you're 20, you've got no heart. And if you're not right wing when you're 40, you've got no brain. But what I think he means is that people become a bit more selfish as they get older. And I think the issue here is that when you have people who are getting older, and especially in a climate where they worry about their financial security, this generation, the 30s and 40s generation, is the first generation to earn less than their parents. When you have people graduating now who are taking on huge debt with little hope of significant financial reward for that debt, they become worried, they become fearful. And I think the connection here we've got to make is that it's in their power, and And I think they're starting to see that now to alter the state of affairs in this country and around the world so that they can benefit from the work they do, from the efforts they've made in their lives, and they can benefit other people. And I think they're a generous generation. I really have seen a change in the last 3 or 4 years.
I like that because on the politics side of things, and I'm not trying to go into a political campaign, but you do have one fact, and that is the Bernie campaign has definitely gotten the young vote for sure. Yeah. And I see the Bernie, and I'm a Bernie man, I'll tell you now, and I'm full of the optimism. I'm just also worried about that realism, but outside of that, full of the optimism, and I see the younger ones are into this as well, and it's just kind of like really neat to see where they're active and motivated versus not our past president, but previous to them, it's like there was a really hard turnout for the young to see if anyone's motivated to do something. So it's neat, like you're saying, they are getting out there. Gentlemen, what else to contribute on that?
I was going to say, I mean, obviously this is said all the time, but social media has really affected this a lot. And you find out you have more information at your disposal so that you can actually make more decisions. You're more informed of, that the injustice that a political person is, kind of putting across, that you're more aware of that. In the past, you weren't, necessarily, I guess, abreast of what was actually happening. So, and now you can actually speak your mind, and other people are listening and paying attention. So, maybe that actually has some actual effect on things politically right now.
It's a great time for social media, how it's affecting a lot of people and things. There's my own personal stuff, which we'll talk about in another podcast, on a gentleman that I just discovered online, and all of a sudden I'm like gung-ho to help him as much as I can. Yeah. And trust me, there was no way I would have found him. That he would not have elicited an article or anything like that, but social media brought it to my attention. So obviously this is going to be key into your things. How many people in your group so far, or even tipping their hat to it? Friends, buddies, associates?
It's pretty hard to actually equate it, because I think everybody we've talked to about this, it's hard to not say, yeah, we don't agree with peace. Like, I think everybody is pretty on board with the idea, but I think the actual committee that we have right now, we've got 5? 8? Yeah, plus 8. Maybe.
The followers. How many of the followers? How many people followers. When we mention your group, how many people say, yes, I'm aware of them?
Oh, gosh. A lot of people.
Yeah, you can tell we do really accurate tallying of our following.
I think Stephen tweets or puts something out on Facebook like every 20 minutes or something. So I would think that we're pretty.
Someone's
I think
addicted.
so. Yeah. No, it's an amazing thing because he does a great job. But it's just I think hopefully people are starting to take notice of some of this stuff.
Well, actually, we have an anecdote. The other day, a friend of mine who's a professor at Earlham, who was working in the State Department in Washington, D.C., she sent me an email saying she heard about that from people talking about it in the State Department.
Absolutely nice. That's the way it should go.
And just kind of, piggybacking off of that, this is our first year. We've been meeting for a few months, and we all have full-time gigs, and we're giving this our all. But I think what we've done is we've really started that network of people, whether it's like the Wexner Center or whether it's the Gateway or whether it's, different groups that we've been working with. And I think this is something that could potentially really sprawl across the state. I love it. And I think this is just the beginning of it. And I think, like Kyle said, we're getting a lot of positive feedback. It's just we're relatively new, and this is the first time I think Ohio has ever had anything like this. So I think the potential for growth is just, I don't think there's any limits really.
Right, and we've been holding back on doing things right now because we've been trying to sort of put everything together, part of this festival, so that our sort of outcoming party would be part of this festival. So we've been sort of holding back on doing things up until that point. So hopefully moving forward after the festival in June, that will be, seeing a lot more, or people would start seeing a lot more things that we're doing.
Okay. Before we get to the festival, I got my one last critique or criticism to ask.
Sure.
So, someone, I'm all about peace. Yay. Okay, cool. That means you're going to not be defensive. You're not going to protect yourself. You're going to be a total pushover. And then there's other people like myself from the military. It's just like, I'm all about peace. And yes, I'm holding my gun when I'm saying that too. Where are you at with the people who are saying that this is going to make weak people, or this is a weak situation?
Well, I think non-violence, which is what we're talking about, trying to make positive social change without recourse to violence, is actually, in Gandhi's term, a tool of the courageous, because you are doing that unarmed. So you are putting yourself in the line, as you can see from your great leaders like Dr. King. The risks are there, and even Gandhi, what happened to him being shot at the end of all his efforts. I would say that in terms of your community building, which is where we're starting, I think it's just common sense. And I don't think it's anything that isn't in the heart of Americans. As an outsider, I don't come from Kentucky. I had a farm in Kentucky, but that's another story. But I come from Britain. I see that immense generosity of spirit among the American people, and that trust, that care, that empathy. And I think all we're talking about here really is the barriers that have been put in place that people don't see this commonality with their fellow humans, like we saw a bit in the 50s, like we saw with, in the South here when the civil rights movement started. And I think what we're seeing now is that people are willing to break those barriers down. And I don't think it's a question of, do we have an adequate national defense? Do we deal with, threats from, Iraq? Do we deal with threats from Syrian people and all that kind of stuff? I don't think it's this kind of global thing to start with. Why we're starting it in Columbus is we understand that we're all neighbours. And if we can understand that we're all neighbours in Columbus and that we can do things together in Columbus that make each other's lives better, then that's really an example for other people around the world and for the politicians, to be honest, our leaders, because I think that's we need to lead by example.
All right. Now, we've got this history established. We've got an idea of where you're at a little bit more defined now. You have this festival coming up. What is the festival going to do, and what about it? And when is it? And cost for admission? And what are the parking tickets? And how do we find out about it? Is there a contest to win or something like that?
Well, you can find out about it at ohiopeace.com. But the festival, I think we've mentioned even more. It was we brought in a international conference, conflict resolution education to Columbus, and from there we decided to build momentum around that by recruiting other organizations that already have a lot of the same ideas of this peace movement, and to build momentum behind that, and to recruit them to hold something or to have an event during that week that just celebrates the idea of building unity through peace. So that's really where the festival started, and then from there we came up with some events that we sort of, based a lot of everything around, and then we encourage everybody to submit something of their own. That how did they fit in with this idea of building peace in the community? And from there, we've had a couple of events that's already on the website. You can obviously check that out. But again, more that we're trying to just recruit anybody to hold something in any kind of fashion. And, so I guess there's not really just one, signature day of events, but the whole idea is that this is a week-long celebration that all these other, community organizations and individuals can hold their own thing that you can, celebrate the idea of, living peacefully with each other.
But we also want you to come to our 2-night film festival,
yes.
and our Meet in the Middle event on June 13th, which I'd be happy to chat about.
Yes.
Then I guess what we're going to do is we're going to chat about that.
Let's do it.
All right. So the festival, what's going to be happening?
Sure. So we're going to
kind of give the dates.
Sure. So I'll start with the June 7th through the 14th. Let's start with the film festival that we're really excited about with the Gateway Film Center across from OSU. The first night is going to be a short film festival focusing on peace.
And what's our cost?
$5.
$5 per person.
Per person.
Right. Student price, kid price.
$5.
$5.
Got to buck it up. Got $5. So we have a lot of cool entries from all over the world. Night 2 is going to be a documentary showing of Night Will Fall. It's a documentary of a documentary regarding the recently liberated Nazi camps following World War II.
Nice.
And how does history and film impact the peace movement. June 13th, Monday, June 13th, is the Civil Discourse panel with the great folks of the National Institute on Civil Discourse. We have former State Representative Ted Celeste coming to moderate a panel talking about the importance of civility in the upcoming presidential elections. The rest of our events, like Kyle said, are all on our website as well.
Okay, so more descriptions you're saying about what's going
Absolutely,
on.
yeah.
Can you, any of those more you can run down?
One of the things we have that's open to everyone, actually, is the International Conference on Conflict Resolution Education, and that's something to say.
Better than I do.
I had to rehearse that at least 4 times a minute.
That's a mouthful.
It is, isn't it? It's a snappy title. So what that's about is it's bringing together conflict resolution educators from around the world. This is teachers, political leaders, politicians responsible for education departments in such countries as Australia. And it brings together also researchers, academics, all sorts of people to do with peace and conflict resolution education. And what's wonderful about it is it's on the website, and it runs from the 8th to the 12th of June, is that anybody can go, and they have, for example, in the first 2 days are basically trainings, and you can go for a 2-day training with Dr. King's secretary, who is in Birmingham jail with him, on non-violence and the use of Kingian non-violence. you can have lessons from leading experts in civil discourse and things like that. For very little money. It's about $65 a day, and that includes food at OSU, which you can decide whether that's a good or a bad thing. But you get that for that. And then the final 2 days are different workshops, small workshops and plenary speeches. We've got a man there called Hans Sinn, who started his life out in the 1930s as a child of war in Germany. He was conscripted into the SS as a trainee officer and then had to run from the Russian troops because he didn't graduate before the war ended, so they wouldn't kill him, and he ended up in Canada and becoming one of the world's leading peace activists. He's going to be talking. He's in his 80s, and he's probably one of the greatest peace activists of our time, and he'll be giving a plenary address. So there's some amazing people, 60 countries represented at this conference.
That is amazing. That would be that's something I'm interested in watching right now. Okay. What else is going to be happening then?
Gosh, what else? We have on June 11th at 10 a.m., we have an event at the Wexner OSU East regarding post-traumatic stress disorder and how that impacts personal and inner peace. So that's going to be a really interesting angle on peace and conflict resolution. I don't think mental health gets a lot of attention when it comes to peace and just in general. So we have that going on. What else do we have going on? God, now I'm blanking on
the No NATO event that same day on the 11th.
And we have karaoke.
There's a karaoke event that's it's actually, like you had mentioned earlier, the 60s flower child sort of idea that it's a different event, that it's not necessarily totally academic, but more of a free spirit sort of idea that it doesn't have to be just I guess totally academic. Like we said, it can actually be a lot more fun and interactive.
Yeah, and we also, Stephen can probably talk to you a bit more about it, but we also have a discussion of the Smart Cities Challenge, which is the grant that Columbus is applying for transportation, and that's part of a wider long-term thing that we're doing on making Columbus and Ohio the center for an emerging peace industrial complex. That's a big dream, but we're starting with a focus, and Stephen's really been the one responsible for organizing that on the Smart Cities Challenge.
Yeah, so this is going to be more of a meeting with nonprofit leaders, city leaders, etc. And we're going to try to frame the discussion on the Smart City Challenge grant, which is from the U.S. Department of Transportation, and Columbus made it to the final 7. We're going to try to use this as a conversation. How do we convert physical mobility to economic and social mobility, and how does that impact social and economic justice? So how does public transit intersect with workforce development, with like I said, economic mobility and social mobility? So we're going to be kind of hosting a roundtable around that, and also transit as a civil rights issue as well. So we got that going on as well. So it's just a fun time.
And right. Stephen invited a really interesting cross-section of the community, and maybe you'd like to talk.
Yeah, sure. So we have folks that represent aging associations. We have people from the Godman Guild who represent, Columbus's low-income urban neighborhoods. We have people, like I said, from the city. We have OSU faculty. We have OSU staff. We have a really good cross-section of government, of nonprofit, of business, kind of coming together in a conversation saying, how can we use transit as a means to lift everyone up in the city of Columbus and not just a select few.
So, all right, now is that everything that's in the event? Minus all the extra little details we're going to find on the website.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other smaller events, but I know there's a Dances of Universal Peace that the Mennonite Church is doing. I think they do this once a month, and it's all about total inner peace, and they come together, they dance, they chant, they do all this other stuff that I'm not actually too familiar with.
Well, you're going, so you're going to find out.
Besides going to it, yes, but I know there's a lot of other organizations that we've talked to that want to do something, and that's still in the planning stages. But I don't want to mention anything right now, just in case it actually falls through. But
no, there's a surprise. This is why
exactly.
You go.
It may have something to do with a yoga company that is, something around
okay,
here,
all right.
there's
there's more.
And
there's more. So much more.
There's plenty more.
Film Two Blue Lines is being shown.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, that's a film about the Israeli-Palestinian relationships in the West Bank. Mm-hmm. So that's a really good film that's being shown and discussed by the Central Ohioans for Peace.
The director's going to be there at that as well.
Yeah, the director of that film's going to be there. So
nice. Okay,
lots of stuff going on.
And this is just on the festival.
This is just that week.
This is just that week.
For 1 week.
Right.
Yeah, there's about 60 workshops and events just with the conference.
That is going to be amazing. Amazing.
It's going to be a lot.
and all the information is going to be at the website of ohiopeace.com.
Yes.
That's right.
And you can also find us on Facebook and Twitter as well. We're very active on there, so stay tuned with everything that we're doing.
And we also have Instagram.
And Instagram.
Instagram's Ohio Peace Fest. Yeah.
What's Instagram? I don't know.
All right. Yeah.
I'm 50. What's that?
No. You're young enough, dear. All right. So finishing that out, so that is like really cool. That is happening. That is the most apparent thing that's going to be going on with your group. Afterwards, what other projects do you have working on for the year? I mean, I know it's kind of hard to think about those when you've got this right in your face, but we have this meeting in the middle.
Yeah, so that's the civil discourse panel. That's going to be
okay.
during the week. I think as far as future events and ideas, we already have those kind of in the pipeline, and we all have ideas. One of the things is Curran Institute at The Ohio State University. They're getting ready to release a documentary called Free to Ride, which looks at public transit and civil rights in the city of Dayton, Ohio. So I kind of want to follow up with the Smart City Challenge workshop with a community-focused group showing that film and kind of focusing more on civil rights, which I think is going to be really cool. I know throughout the course of the year, Kyle and John and others in our group have mentioned, bringing in climate change, bringing in more of a gender focus. So really the sky's the limit. But as John said before, we're trying to kind of do a series of workshops to build or to make Columbus kind of a hub for peace and industry. So I think that's kind of the direction we're going to take. And John can probably elaborate on that.
We are. That's the idea. That's one of the big themes, the long-term themes. So we have this celebration, this annual event, and then we're going to work on long-term projects and continuous smaller projects throughout the year. I mean, Carl can talk in a minute about his excellent running race that's going to come up. That involves running with heavy weights. So it sounds like a thrill.
Heavy weights, heavy guys? You mean heavyweights?
Well, hey, if you want to do that, that's fine. I mean,
If I was running, I wouldn't be this big. I mean,
Sure.
Hi.
Well, I guess going into the race, it's called Running Water. We've teamed up with a Columbus-based charity called Pack H2O that they've built a backpack for people in water-stressed areas that you have to walk 6 miles to get clean water. And instead of carrying around, what you see a lot of times depicted is them carrying it in old gasoline cans, or they're carrying them on top of their head. And obviously that it's not necessarily sanitary when you're putting your clean water that you're trying to drink from every day into chemicals basically. So this company came up with this backpack. It's ergonomic. It carries 5 gallons of water, and so we're teaming up with them to create this race that can either run just a normal 10K, or you can decide to run one of these 10Ks carrying this backpack filled with 3 gallons of water to kind of mimic the same thing that these people go through every day just to get clean water. So it's really cool right now. It's October 2nd. So at the moment, that's one of the future events that we're having. I know that we're going to also continue on with this, I guess, the weapons of mass construction idea, not necessarily destruction, but construction, that John can actually talk about, which will actually develop this peace industrial complex.
Tell us about this.
So I came up with this brilliant idea of a peace industrial complex, and then went online and found someone else had. And his name's Idris Abakeni, and he's got a YouTube video about it, and he's going to come to talk to us about it. He was at Stanford. He's French. He's now in Paris, and he came up also with the idea of weapons of mass construction. And the idea is that if you put the amount, when he's talking about what a superpower might be, a superpower, it turns out, isn't the country with the biggest army, it's the country with the best infrastructure. That's actually the proper definition of it. So countries that are investing in things like transportation and the like will be the most biggest superpowers, hence our discussion of transportation. And the whole point of this peace industrial complex idea is to say that peace pays. That we've seen, I can slip into my little academic mode for a minute and step back and everybody can go to sleep, and I'll stop in about a minute.
You got 2.
Okay. Oh, good. Catnap. Right. The idea is that you've seen that the capitalist system, or the businesses have gone into things like the military now. They provide a large amount of the services for the military, a large amount of the personnel, the training, and things of that nature. And you've seen that. You've seen it in the medical sector and things like that. So our idea is that there's actually the next frontier is building peace and social justice, and I see 3 types of transitions in the commercial sector. It went originally from predatory. That's the way I look at it. When people working in the factories with machines that sort of ripped your leg off, and then buying lead-covered things that you sucked on as kids and died. So it went from that predatory thing. So now we're going to see this parasitic thing where we now have all these apps that monitor us and teach us what to do and track us all the time. And I think the next stage, and companies like IKEA, who are actually going to be sending people in November to meet with us. They've got a Better Shelter initiative, which is building flat pack refugee shelters for refugee camps. And we're talking of working with local furniture companies to train refugees to build furniture in their camps from scrap wood. So that they can go into these devices. Well, anyway, companies like that are now seeing with things like upcycling, and you rent washing machines now and they go back, and this emphasis is now the third stage, which is symbiotic relationship with people, where companies are understanding that a healthier, happier, better served public are able to buy more of their stuff and to realize their dreams. So hope, it's an economy of hope. And so that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at making peace pay, basically. And what that really means is making hope pay. And we're having a few meetings leading up to November. And then we're going to bring in people from IKEA. Hopefully Idris will come. And we're going to have a discussion in a panel about seeing how in Ohio we can start, like Ohio has always been this hub of industry, how we can start to build a peace industrial complex in Ohio.
And also the millennial generation, it statistically has been showing that they favor companies that give back rather than are just purely, profit driven. So, this is sort of building on that idea, is that this is what people who are buying their products expect from the people that they're buying them from.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that John kind of references, these kind of workshops or these kind of meetings that we're doing, we're trying to focus each meeting on kind of like a topic. So we're going to start with transit. We want to go into like refugees, we can go into shelter or water. And we want to kind of get leaders and, like I said, different organizations to come to these meetings. And at the end of the year, hopefully kind of have a blueprint for a more peaceful economy that we can actually share with businesses, so we can have kind of a tangible result and kind of moving this kind of movement forward, I should say, with peace in industry and how do you make profit good for everyone. So I think that's kind of what the whole purpose is down the line. So that's what we'll be working on after June.
Is that all? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, this has been a very wonderful episode of the interview at this point, because we still haven't had a name for this, but we're going to be doing a lot of things here at True FM, and this is obviously one of those great pieces. So, gentlemen, it's been great to have you in. That's for sure. Okay, this is going to be amazing that you are putting together such a wonderful project that is not just a nice one-time thing. This is a long-term, and it's something that I can look forward to now as I get older, instead of getting depressed as I get older.
Absolutely.
2, you are always welcome back at any time. All right.
Love to be here. This was actually a lot of fun.
Well, that's the idea. You got Michael here, you got Curtis over there, and you got Clay here. So all of us, talk to us, anything, these two especially. But we would be glad to help endeavors, in any way we shape or can, because this is that kind of thing that's just great momentum all the way through. Lastly, we are going to round out this podcast with let's go run down the websites and the dates so that everyone's got in a nutshell.
OhioPeace.com.
The dates are the 7th to the 14th of June 2016.
Major events include 2-night film festival at the Gateway, a civil discourse panel Monday, June 13th, no NATO event June 11th, and the International Conflict Resolution Education Conference going on that entire week as well at The Ohio State University.
Well, everyone, thank you very much, gentlemen, for being here.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you so much.
Not a problem. This is a blast.
Thanks for being so kind.
This is going to be great. We're going to do a little bit more here in a minute. So everyone at True FM, thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and the shows and everything that's going on here at truefmonline.com. Peace out, because that's the first best thing here. So, thank you.
Thank you.